The champagne flutes clinked against each other in perfect harmony, creating that delicate crystal sound that only happens at celebrations where everything looks picture-perfect from the outside. I stood in our backyard, watching my family's carefully orchestrated performance unfold like a Broadway show I'd seen too many times before. Connor was 21, fresh out of college, and absolutely glowing as he ran his hands over the pristine white BMW sitting in our driveway. The afternoon sun caught the metallic paint just right, making it look like something out of a luxury car commercial. Our relatives gathered around him like he was some kind of celebrity, phones out, taking pictures for social media. Uncle Mike was already posting to Facebook with captions like, "So proud of our graduate." "Madison, honey, come take a picture with your brother," Mom called out, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted everything to appear normal. Patricia Carter had mastered the art of surface-level perfection. Her blonde hair was styled in soft waves, not a strand out of place, and her smile was bright enough to power the entire neighborhood. I walked over, positioning myself next to Connor's new car. The leather seats still had that new car smell wafting out through the open doors. I knew because I'd helped Dad research this exact model 3 months ago when they started shopping around for Connor's graduation gift. Back then, they'd asked for my input on features and trim levels. I'd spent hours comparing safety ratings and fuel efficiency, thinking I was helping my family make a smart decision. What I didn't know was that I was researching my own replacement. Connor threw his arm around my shoulders for the photo, and for just a moment I remembered when we were kids. Back when things felt simpler. When I was 8 and he was 5 and I'd help him tie his shoes before school. When my parents would praise me for being such a good big sister and so responsible for her age. Those words used to make me feel special, important, needed. "Madison's always been our little helper," Dad announced to the gathered crowd, raising his scotch glass toward me. Richard Carter commanded attention whenever he spoke. At 52, he still looked like the successful businessman he'd always been, tall, confident, with graying hair that made him look distinguished rather than old. "She's the one who helped us pick out this beauty." The relatives murmured their approval, but I caught something in Dad's tone. A subtle edge that suggested my helping was expected, not appreciated. It was the same tone he used when he'd say things like, "Madison understands that family comes first," or "Madison doesn't need as much as other kids her age." I forced a smile and nodded, playing my part in the family theater. But something felt different today. Maybe it was the way Connor kept glancing at me with what almost looked like guilt, or the way Mom kept avoiding direct eye contact. There was an electricity in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm hits. "Where's Madison's gift?" Aunt Susan asked innocently, looking around as if she expected to see another car hidden somewhere. "I mean, she graduated too, right? Summa cum laude from state?" The question hung in the air for exactly 3 seconds too long. I watched my parents exchange a look, one of those married couple telepathic conversations that happen in the space between words. "Oh, Madison's gift is very special," Mom said, her voice taking on a mysterious quality. "Very personalized. We'll do that privately after everyone leaves." Connor shifted uncomfortably next to his BMW, running his hand through his dark hair. "Mom, maybe we should—" "Later, sweetheart." Mom cut him off smoothly. "Let's focus on celebrating Connor's achievement right now." And there it was, the familiar sting of being an afterthought in my own family. I'd graduated 3 weeks ago with a 3.9 GPA, working 2 jobs throughout college to pay my own tuition while Connor's college experience had been fully funded. I'd done internships every summer while Connor spent his breaks traveling with friends on Dad's credit card. I'd written my senior thesis on sustainable business practices while Connor had barely scraped by with a C average in communications. But today was Connor's day. It was always Connor's day. I excused myself from the photo session and walked toward the house, needing a moment to collect myself. Our home was beautiful, a 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters, surrounded by perfectly manicured landscaping. From the outside, we looked like the American dream. Inside, though, I'd learned to read the subtle language of favoritism that most visitors missed. Connor's school achievements lined the hallway walls in expensive frames, while mine were relegated to a small corner of the kitchen where only family members would see them. Connor's bedroom was twice the size of mine, with a view of the backyard, while I'd been moved to the smaller front room when he turned 13 and needed more space for his hobbies. The subtle messages had been accumulating for years, like sediment at the bottom of a river. I'd learned to accept them as normal, even to rationalize them. Connor was the baby after all. Connor was more social, more outgoing. Connor needed more support because he struggled academically. Connor. I found myself standing in the kitchen, staring at my college diploma hanging next to the spice rack. Summa cum laude, business administration with a minor in finance. 4 years of Dean's List recognition, all of it squeezed into the narrow space between the salt and pepper shakers. Madison? Riley's voice came from behind me. She'd driven 3 hours to be here for my family's graduation celebration, even though my actual graduation ceremony had been weeks ago. Riley Thompson had been my best friend since freshman year of college, and she was one of the few people who'd seen through my family's carefully constructed facade. "You okay?" she asked, studying my expression with the kind of attention that only comes from genuine friendship. "Yeah, I gestured vaguely toward the window where Connor was now sitting in the driver's seat of his BMW, surrounded by our cousins who were taking turns posing for Instagram photos. Just thinking about how different things are going to be now that we've both graduated. Riley followed my gaze and frowned. She'd been around my family enough to notice the patterns, even when I tried to hide them. "Madison, can I ask you something? And I want you to be honest with me." I nodded, though part of me dreaded where this conversation might go. "When's the last time your parents celebrated something you accomplished? Like, really celebrated it? With the same energy they're putting into Connor's graduation party right now?" The question hit me like a physical blow because I couldn't immediately answer it. I searched my memory, going back through years of achievements, awards, recognition, and milestones. There had been acknowledgments, sure, polite praise, quick hugs, and "that's nice, honey" responses. But a celebration? A party with relatives and photography and speeches about how proud they were? I was still searching my memory when Mom's voice drifted in from the backyard. "Madison, sweetheart, could you help me with something in the kitchen? The caterer needs more serving trays." Of course. Even at Connor's graduation party, I was the one handling logistics. I was the one making sure everything ran smoothly behind the scenes while Connor basked in the spotlight. "I should go help," I told Riley, but she caught my arm gently. "You don't have to be their unpaid event coordinator forever," she said quietly. "You know that, right?" Before I could respond, Mom appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking slightly frazzled despite her perfectly applied makeup. "Oh, Madison, there you are. The caterer is asking about the dessert setup, and I can't find the good serving spoons anywhere. You know where everything is better than I do." She paused, noticing Riley. "Hi, Riley dear. Are you enjoying the party?" "It's lovely, Mrs. Carter," Riley replied with the kind of polite smile she reserved for adults she didn't particularly like. "Connor must be thrilled with the car." "Oh, he is. He's been wanting a BMW since his sophomore year, and we finally decided he'd earned it. All those late-night studying finally paid off." Mom's version of Connor's college experience bore no resemblance to the reality I'd witnessed, but I'd learned long ago that correcting these narratives was pointless. I spent the next hour managing the party logistics while Connor held court by his new car. I refilled ice buckets, arranged dessert platters, and made sure the elderly relatives had comfortable seating. I took photos of other people's celebrations and listened to endless stories about Connor's bright future ahead. By the time the sun started setting and the relatives began making their departure excuses, I felt like I'd worked a full shift at an event planning company. My feet hurt from standing on the patio in dress shoes, and my cheeks ached from maintaining a pleasant expression for hours. "Madison, why don't you come outside?" Dad called from the backyard as the last few guests lingered around the cooling grill. "It's time for your gift." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. There was informality to it that felt ominous rather than exciting. I glanced at Riley, who'd been helping me clean up in the kitchen, and saw my own uneasiness reflected in her expression. We walked outside together, where the remaining family members had formed a loose circle around the patio furniture. Connor was still leaning against his BMW, but he looked uncomfortable now, like he knew something I didn't. Mom emerged from the house carrying a small envelope, the kind you might use for a greeting card or a gift certificate. It looked insignificant compared to the massive bow that had been tied to Connor's car, but I tried to summon some excitement anyway. Maybe it was concert tickets, or a gift card for a nice dinner, or even a small contribution toward my student loans. "Madison, we are so proud of you," Mom began, her voice taking on the rehearsed quality of a prepared speech. "You've always been our responsible one, our practical child. While Connor was learning to navigate the social aspects of college, you were developing real-world skills and independence." I accepted the envelope, noting how thin it felt between my fingers. Definitely not a thick gift certificate. Maybe a check? "We wanted to give you something that reflects your maturity and your readiness for adult responsibilities," Dad continued. "Something that acknowledges the young woman you've become." The remaining relatives watched with polite attention, probably expecting to witness another heartwarming family moment. Uncle Mike had his phone out again, ready to capture whatever touching scene was about to unfold. I opened the envelope carefully, sliding out what appeared to be a folded piece of paper. For a moment, I thought it might be a letter, some kind of heartfelt message acknowledging my achievements and expressing their love and pride. Instead, I found myself staring at an itemized bill. At the top, in my mother's careful handwriting, were the words, "Madison Carter, outstanding balance." Below that, a detailed list. Housing, 24 years or 800 month. $230,400 food and utilities, estimated. $48,000 medical and dental expenses. $15,000 transportation and miscellaneous. $12,000 total amount due. $305, $400 at the bottom in the same careful handwriting. Payment plan available. Time to learn real financial responsibility, unlike some people. Love, Mom and Dad. I read it once, then twice, then a third time, because surely I was misunderstanding something. This had to be some kind of joke, some kind of elaborate setup for a real gift that would be revealed when everyone laughed at the absurdity of the fake bill. But nobody was laughing. The backyard went silent except for the sound of ice settling in someone's drink glass. I could feel everyone watching me, waiting for my reaction. I looked up at my parents, searching their faces for some sign that this was a prank or a mistake. Instead, I saw something I'd never seen before. Cold calculation. They were serious. They had actually created a bill for the cost of raising me and presented it as a graduation gift in front of our extended family. I started to speak, but no words came out. My throat felt like it was closing. Connor pushed himself away from his BMW and took a step toward me. "Mom, Dad, this isn't—" "Connor, stay out of this," Dad said sharply. "This is between us and your sister." My sister, not Madison. Not even your sister Madison. Just your sister. Like I was some generic family obligation rather than a person with a name. I looked down at the bill again, my eyes catching on specific line items. They'd charged me for medical expenses, including the time I broke my arm falling off my bike when I was 7. They'd charged me for food, including presumably all the times I'd been sent to bed without dinner as punishment. They'd charged me for transportation, including rides to school and activities that normal parents provide without expecting reimbursement. They'd commodified my entire childhood and presented the invoice as a graduation present. "We know it seems like a lot," Mom said, her voice taking on the tone she used when she was trying to sound reasonable. "But we've been keeping track for years, and we thought your graduation was the perfect time to transition you to full financial independence. It's really quite generous when you consider the current cost of living." Generous. They thought charging me $300,000 for the privilege of existing as their child was generous. I felt something breaking inside my chest, not just my heart, but something deeper. Some fundamental belief about love and family and what parents owe their children. Some basic assumption about my place in the world that had just been shattered beyond repair. "Madison, honey, say something," Aunt Susan whispered, her voice tight with the kind of uncomfortable concern people get when they witness something that doesn't make sense, but I couldn't say anything because there were no words for what I was feeling. This wasn't just about money. This was about being told in the most brutal way possible that my parents had never seen me as their daughter. They'd seen me as a tenant, a customer, a financial burden that had finally come due. I looked around the circle of faces, relatives who'd known me since birth, family friends who'd watched me grow up, people who'd probably expected to see me tear up with gratitude over whatever thoughtful gift my parents had chosen for my graduation. Instead, they were watching me hold a bill for my own existence while my brother stood next to his free BMW, looking like he wanted to disappear into the ground. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across our perfect backyard, and I realized that this moment was going to divide my life into two parts. Before I knew what my parents really thought of me, and after. I folded the bill carefully and put it back in the envelope. My hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. I felt eerily calm, like I was watching this happen to someone else. "Thank you," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "This is very illuminating." I turned to walk toward the house, but Dad's voice stopped me. "Madison, we can discuss payment arrangements. We're not unreasonable people." I turned back to look at him, really look at him. At the man who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with algebra homework and walked me to the school bus on my first day of kindergarten. The man who'd just handed me a bill for all of those moments. "No," I said simply. "You're not unreasonable at all. You're exactly who you've always been. I just finally see it clearly." And with that, I walked into the house, leaving behind 24 years of illusion and stepping into whatever came next. The first thing I did when I reached my room was sit down at my laptop. My hands were still steady, my mind surprisingly clear despite the emotional earthquake that had just restructured my entire understanding of my family. I pulled up my browser and typed in the search terms that had been floating in the back of my consciousness for years, without me ever acknowledging them: narcissistic family dynamics and golden child scapegoat roles. What I found in the next 30 minutes changed everything. Article after article described my exact childhood experience with clinical precision. The responsible older child who becomes the family's emotional caretaker, the younger sibling who can do no wrong while the older one is held to impossible standards, parents who view their children as extensions of themselves rather than independent human beings, families where love is conditional and transactional. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't ungrateful. I wasn't imagining the patterns I'd lived with for 24 years. There was a name for what had happened to me: parentification. When a child is forced to take on adult responsibilities and emotional burdens that should be handled by parents. When a child becomes the family's problem solver, mediator, and emotional support system while their own needs are consistently dismissed. Riley knocked on my door around 10 p.m. after the last of the guests had finally left. I heard muffled voices downstairs, my parents probably explaining to Connor why they'd chosen such an unusual graduation gift for me, probably coaching him on how to respond if anyone asked questions. "Madison, can I come in?" I looked up from my laptop screen where I'd been deep in a forum discussion about adult children who'd gone no contact with their families. The stories were eerily similar to mine. Successful, independent adults who'd spent their entire lives being treated as supporting characters in their own family's dramas. "Yeah, come in." Riley entered and immediately sat on my bed, studying my face with the concern of someone who'd watched me navigate my family's dysfunction for 4 years. "Okay, I need to know. What the actual hell was that? Please tell me your parents haven't lost their minds completely." I turned my laptop screen toward her, showing her the itemized bill that had been my graduation present. Her eyes widened as she read through the charges, and I watched her expression shift from confusion to disbelief to outright anger. "Madison, this is..." She struggled for words. "This is financial abuse. You know that, right? Normal parents don't charge their children rent for existing. Normal parents don't keep a running tab of everything they spend on basic child rearing and then present it as a bill." The validation felt like cool water on a burn. For the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe normally. I've been reading about it, I said, gesturing to my laptop. Apparently, what happened to me has a name. I'm what they call the designated family scapegoat. Connor is the golden child who can do no wrong, and I'm the one who absorbs all the family's problems and takes responsibility for everyone else's emotions. Riley was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, she said, "How long have you known?" I didn't know, not consciously. I just thought this was normal family stuff. Sibling rivalry, birth order dynamics. I thought maybe I wasn't as likable as Connor, or maybe I just needed to try harder to earn their approval. Madison. Riley's voice was gentle but firm. Listen to me. You graduated summa cum laude from a competitive business program. You worked 2 jobs throughout college and paid your own way. You've been emotionally supporting your entire family since you were a child. You are remarkable, and the fact that your parents can't see that says everything about them and nothing about you. Something inside my chest loosened at her words. For 24 years, I'd been trying to solve the equation of my family's love, trying to figure out what I was doing wrong, what I needed to change, how I could become the kind of daughter who deserved the same treatment Connor received automatically. But there was no equation to solve. The problem wasn't me. It never had been. I closed my laptop and looked around my childhood bedroom. The walls were covered with achievement certificates and academic awards that my parents had never properly celebrated. My bookshelf was full of personal development books I'd bought myself, trying to become worthy of love I should have received unconditionally. "Riley," I said slowly, "I think I need to leave." "Leave? Like, go home to your apartment?" "No, I mean leave, cut contact, move away from here and start over somewhere they can't reach me." Riley was quiet for a moment, and I could see her processing the magnitude of what I was suggesting. Going no contact with family was still taboo in most circles. People would ask questions. They'd assume I was the problem, that I was ungrateful or had done something to deserve rejection from my own parents. "Where would you go?" she asked finally. "I got a job offer 2 months ago, a consulting firm in Denver. I turned it down because I thought I should stay close to family after graduation, help Connor transition into adult life, be available for whatever my parents might need." I laughed bitterly at my own naivety, but I think they might still be interested. "Madison, are you sure? This is a big decision. Maybe you should sleep on it, think about it for a few days." Before I could respond, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room. A soft knock on the door. "Madison?" Connor's voice. "Can we talk?" I looked at Riley, who shrugged. "I'll go downstairs and get some water, give you two some privacy." After she left, Connor entered my room, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the past few hours. His hair was disheveled, and he still smelled faintly of the cologne he'd put on for the party where he'd received a BMW and I'd received a bill for existing. "Madison, I need to apologize. What Mom and Dad did tonight." He sat down in my desk chair, running his hands through his hair. "I knew they were planning something different for your graduation gift, but I had no idea it was that." "Different how?" "They said they wanted to give you something that would help you become more independent. I thought maybe they were going to help with a security deposit on a new apartment or contribute to paying off your student loans. Something practical." He looked up at me with genuine distress. "I never imagined they were keeping a financial ledger of your entire childhood." "Connor, can I ask you something? And I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course." "Do you think it's normal for parents to charge their children for the cost of raising them?" He was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him wrestling with conflicting loyalties. Finally, he said, "No, it's not normal. It's actually pretty messed up." "Then why didn't you say something when they gave me that bill? Why didn't you speak up?" Connor's face flushed red. "Because I'm a coward. Because speaking up against Mom and Dad has never worked out well for me in the past. Because—" He paused, struggling with something. "Because part of me has always known that you got treated differently than me, and I've been afraid that if I drew attention to it, they might start treating me the way they treat you." The honesty in his admission was like a punch to the gut. For years, I'd wondered if Connor truly didn't see the disparity in how our parents treated us, or if he was just too selfish to care. Now I knew the truth. He saw it. He knew it was wrong, but he'd stayed silent to protect his own privileged position. "Connor, I'm leaving. Tonight. I'm going to pack my things and drive to Denver." His eyes widened. "Madison, you can't just leave. This is your family. We can work through this. Maybe I can talk to Mom and Dad, help them understand." "Understand what? That charging their daughter $300,000 for raising her isn't an appropriate graduation gift? That keeping an itemized bill of every expense they incurred on my behalf for 24 years isn't normal parental behavior?" I stood up and started pulling clothes out of my dresser. "Connor, if they don't already understand that those things are wrong, no conversation you have with them is going to make a difference." "But what about Christmas? What about family gatherings? What about—" He trailed off, and I could see him realizing the implications of what I was saying. "What about them? You'll still have your BMW and your trust fund and your parents who think you hung the moon. I'll have my independence and my self-respect and a chance to build relationships with people who see me as more than a walking ATM." I pulled 2 suitcases out of my closet and started packing systematically. Years of being the family's logistics coordinator had taught me how to pack efficiently. I folded my clothes, wrapped my fragile items in t-shirts, and organized everything into categories. Connor watched me pack for several minutes without speaking. Finally, he said, "Madison, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all the times I didn't speak up when I should have. I'm sorry for letting you carry all the responsibility while I got all the credit. I'm sorry I was too much of a coward to defend you tonight." I paused in my packing and looked at him. For the first time in years, Connor looked like the little brother I remembered from childhood, scared and uncertain and genuinely remorseful. "I appreciate that, Connor. I really do. But an apology doesn't undo 24 years of enabling Mom and Dad's behavior, and it doesn't change the fact that you benefited from my treatment while staying silent about how wrong it was." "So that's it? You're just going to disappear and never speak to any of us again?" "I'm going to create boundaries that protect my mental health and well-being. If that looks like disappearing to you, maybe that says something about how unhealthy this family dynamic really is." I finished packing my essentials and zipped up both suitcases. Everything that mattered to me fit into 2 bags. 24 years of life in this house, and the things worth taking could be carried to my car in one trip. Riley appeared in my doorway with a bottle of water and immediately assessed the situation. "Road trip?" "Road trip," I confirmed. "Want company for the first few hours? I can follow you out of state and then fly back from Denver." The offer brought tears to my eyes, the first tears I'd shed since reading that bill. Riley understood that what I was doing wasn't just leaving home, it was escaping from a system that had never seen me as a full person. "I would love that," I said. Connor stood up from my desk chair, looking lost. "Madison, what am I supposed to tell Mom and Dad when they ask where you went?" "Tell them I'm paying my own way now. That should make them happy." I hugged him goodbye. A real hug, not the performative kind we usually shared at family gatherings. Despite everything, Connor was still my brother. He was still the little boy I'd helped tie his shoes and taught to ride a bike. But he was also an adult who'd chosen comfort over courage, privilege over principle. "Take care of yourself, Connor, and maybe think about getting some therapy. This family messed you up too, just in different ways." Riley helped me carry my suitcases to my car, and we loaded them into the back seat of my reliable Honda Civic, the car I'd bought myself with money from my summer job junior year. As I was arranging my belongings, I heard the front door of the house open. "Madison!" Mom's voice, sharp with command. "Where do you think you're going with those suitcases?" I straightened up and turned to face her. She stood on the front porch in her silk pajamas and matching robe, looking like she'd been disturbed from her evening routine. Dad appeared behind her, wearing his reading glasses and holding what looked like financial documents. "I'm leaving," I said simply. "Don't be dramatic, Madison. Come inside and we can discuss this like adults. If you're upset about your graduation gift, we can talk about adjusting the payment terms." The fact that she still thought this was about payment terms, that she genuinely didn't understand why charging me for my own childhood might be hurtful, confirmed every article I'd read about narcissistic family dynamics. "Mom, there's nothing to discuss. You've made it very clear how you see me. I'm not your daughter. I'm a financial obligation that's finally come due. so I'm going to relieve you of that obligation permanently." "You're overreacting," Dad interjected, walking down the porch steps toward my car. "Every parent invests money in raising their children. We're just being transparent about the costs involved. Most parents never tell their kids how much they've spent, but we thought you were mature enough to handle the reality." "The reality?" I stared at him in disbelief. "The reality is that normal parents don't keep receipts for every sandwich they make their child. Normal parents don't charge interest on the cost of birthday presents. Normal parents don't present their child with a bill for existing and call it a graduation gift." "Madison, you're embarrassing yourself," Mom said, her voice taking on the cold edge that appeared whenever someone challenged the family narrative. "The neighbors are going to wonder what all this commotion is about." And there it was. Her primary concern wasn't that her daughter was leaving home in emotional distress. It was that the neighbors might witness something that contradicted the image of family perfection she'd spent decades constructing. "Let them wonder," I said, closing the trunk of my car. "Maybe they'll ask themselves why the kid with the perfect grades and the full-time job is driving away in the middle of the night instead of celebrating her graduation with her family." I got into my car and started the engine. Riley had already moved her car out of the driveway to give me space to back out. Through my windshield, I could see my parents standing in the driveway, looking more confused than concerned. They truly didn't understand what they'd done wrong. In their minds, they'd raised a successful daughter who should be grateful for all the investments they'd made in her future. The fact that I was hurt by their transactional approach to parenting was just evidence of my unreasonable emotional expectations. I rolled down my window as I backed out of the driveway. "Madison!" Mom called out one more time. "You're making a mistake. Family is everything. You can't just throw away everything we've built together." I paused, looking at the house where I'd spent 24 years trying to earn love that should have been freely given, at the parents who'd just presented me with a bill for the privilege of being their child, at the brother standing in the doorway who'd known this moment might come and had done nothing to prevent it. "Mom," I said calmly, "we didn't build anything together. You built a performance, and I was just a supporting character. But the show is over now." And with that, I drove away from everything I'd ever known, toward a future where my worth wouldn't be measured by my usefulness to other people. Riley followed me to the highway, and we drove through the night toward Colorado, toward a life where I could discover who Madison Carter was when she wasn't busy being everyone else's solution to their problems. 3 months later, I was settled in Denver with a job I loved and an apartment that belonged entirely to me. I'd blocked my parents' phone numbers and social media accounts. I'd changed my address with the post office and instructed them not to forward any mail from my previous residence. The silence was deafening at first. For 24 years, my phone had buzzed constantly with family crisis management requests. Mom needing me to research vacation destinations. Dad asking me to help Connor with job applications. Connor himself calling whenever he needed emotional support or practical advice. Now, my phone stayed quiet, and I got to choose how to spend my emotional energy. The consulting firm welcomed me enthusiastically, and I threw myself into work with the focused intensity of someone who no longer had to split her attention between professional goals and family drama management. My colleagues appreciated my analytical skills and attention to detail, qualities that had been taken for granted at home, but were valued and rewarded in my professional environment. I made new friends through work and through hiking groups in the Colorado mountains. These relationships felt different from anything I'd experienced before. They were based on mutual interest and genuine enjoyment of each other's company, not on my ability to solve problems or manage other people's emotions. For the first time in my adult life, I could go out for dinner without worrying about whether Connor needed help with something. I could plan weekend trips without checking if my parents had any family obligations they expected me to coordinate. I could make decisions based solely on what I wanted, not on what would best serve other people's needs. The transformation wasn't immediate or easy. Years of conditioning had trained me to prioritize other people's comfort over my own well-being. I found myself automatically offering to handle logistics for group activities or volunteering to mediate when friends had disagreements. Learning to step back and let other adults manage their own lives was a process, but gradually I began to understand what healthy relationships looked like. Friends who checked on me when I was stressed, not just when they needed something from me. Colleagues who valued my contributions without taking them for granted. A romantic relationship with a man who saw my kindness as a gift, not an obligation. Riley visited me in Denver 6 months after I left home, and she was amazed by the transformation she saw. "Madison, you look different," she said as we hiked through Rocky Mountain National Park. "More relaxed, like you're not carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders anymore." "I'm not," I said simply. "I'm only responsible for my own life now. It turns out that's enough of a job for one person." "Have you heard anything from your family?" I'd been wondering when this question would come up. Connor sent me a few texts in the first month, mostly updates about family drama and asking for advice about job interviews. I never responded. Mom tried calling from different phone numbers for a while, but I never answered. Dad sent a few emails to my work address before I blocked that too. "Do you miss them?" It was a complicated question. Did I miss the people I thought they were? Sometimes. Did I miss the feeling of being needed? Occasionally. Did I miss the constant stress of managing everyone else's emotions? Never. "I miss the idea of them," I said finally. "I miss having a family that loves and supports each other unconditionally. But I never actually had that. I just spent 24 years pretending I did." Riley was quiet for a while as we climbed higher into the mountains. Finally, she said, "I'm proud of you. It takes incredible strength to walk away from family, even when they're toxic. Most people stay stuck in those patterns forever. I got lucky. That bill was so obviously wrong that even I couldn't rationalize it away anymore. If they'd been more subtle about their rejection, I might have spent another decade trying to earn their approval." As we reached the summit of our hike, I looked out over the Colorado landscape stretching for miles in every direction. The view was breathtaking, but what struck me most was the sense of space and possibility. For the first time in my life, I could see clearly in all directions without obstacles blocking my view. That evening, Riley and I were having dinner at a restaurant in downtown Denver when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a Facebook message from someone I didn't recognize, but when I opened it, I realized it was from my cousin Sarah, Uncle Mike's daughter, who had been at Connor's graduation party. "Madison, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I got your name from the Denver consulting firm's website. I've been thinking about you since Connor's graduation party. I wanted you to know that what your parents did that night was completely inappropriate. Several of us family members have talked about it, and we're all concerned about you. I hope you're doing well. If you ever want to talk to someone who understands complicated family dynamics, I'm here. My own relationship with my parents has been challenging." I showed the message to Riley, who read it with interest. "Looks like you're not the only one who saw through your family's performance," she said. I spent the rest of the evening thinking about Sarah's message and what it represented. For years, I'd assumed that everyone in my extended family saw the same perfect family image that my parents projected. I'd thought that Connor's privileged treatment and my supportive role were so normal that no one would question them, but apparently, some people had been paying closer attention than I realized. Some people had seen through the carefully constructed facade and recognized the dysfunction underneath. I wrote back to Sarah the next day, thanking her for reaching out and letting her know that I was doing well in my new life. We started corresponding regularly, and I learned that she'd had her own struggles with family expectations and conditional love. Through our conversations, I began to understand that my experience, while extreme, wasn't unique. Many people struggle with family systems that prioritize image over authenticity, performance over genuine connection. Sarah also gave me updates about my immediate family, though I hadn't asked for them. Apparently, Connor was struggling with adult responsibilities without my constant support. He'd been fired from his first job for attendance issues and had moved back in with our parents. Mom and Dad were frustrated with having to manage his problems directly instead of delegating them to me. "They keep asking Connor if he's heard from you," Sarah told me during one of our phone calls. "I think they assumed you'd come back after a few weeks once you'd made your point. They don't seem to understand that this isn't a tantrum. It's a permanent boundary." The information about my family's struggles didn't bring me satisfaction exactly, but it did bring clarity. Their system had depended on my participation to function smoothly. Without someone to absorb the chaos and manage the logistics, they were having to face the natural consequences of their own choices and behaviors. That wasn't my responsibility to fix, and it never had been. A year after leaving home, I got a promotion at work and moved into a larger apartment with a view of the mountains. I adopted a rescue dog, a golden retriever mix named Charlie, who had also been discarded by people who should have loved him unconditionally. We were a good match, two souls learning to trust again after experiencing rejection from those we'd depended on most. On the anniversary of my escape from my family's dysfunction, I wrote myself a letter, something my therapist had suggested as a way of acknowledging how far I'd come. "Dear Madison," I wrote, "1 year ago, you made the bravest decision of your life. You chose yourself over the familiar dysfunction of your family system. You chose truth over the comfortable lies you'd been telling yourself for decades. You chose growth over stagnation, boundaries over exploitation, authentic relationships over performative ones. The person you've become over this past year is someone your younger self would be proud to know. You've learned that your worth isn't determined by your usefulness to other people. You've discovered that love doesn't come with itemized bills or conditional terms. You've built a life based on your own values and desires instead of trying to meet other people's impossible expectations. You've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to walk away from situations that bring out everyone's worst qualities. You've learned that family isn't just about shared DNA. It's about mutual respect, support, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Your biological family may never understand the gift you gave them by removing yourself from their dysfunctional system. They may never recognize that their behavior was harmful, or acknowledge that they lost something precious when they decided to treat you as a financial transaction instead of a beloved daughter. But that's their loss, not yours. You've found your chosen family in friends who celebrate your successes, colleagues who value your contributions, and a community that sees you as the complete, complex, worthy person you've always been. Keep growing, keep building, keep choosing yourself. The life you've created is beautiful, and you deserve every moment of peace and joy it brings you. I sealed the letter and put it in the drawer of my desk, next to the itemized bill that had changed everything. Some people might find it strange that I kept that document, but it served as a reminder of how far I'd traveled from that moment of devastating clarity to this moment of hard-won peace. The bill represented the end of my old life and the beginning of my new one. It was evidence of what I'd survived and proof of my strength in choosing a different path. And sometimes, when I needed to remember why I'd made the difficult choice to leave everything familiar behind, I would read both documents, the bill that had tried to reduce me to a financial obligation, and the letter that celebrated the person I'd become when I refused to accept that definition of my worth. The contrast between them told the story of my transformation from a supporting character in someone else's narrative to the author of my own life. And that, I realized, was the most valuable inheritance I could have given myself,